Loves, and welcome back to my channel. So in today's video we are going to learn how to make this corset dress with drapings at the waist side, and it also has a pleated bra cup and a pleated detail at the shoulder. Please guys, follow me on Instagram at so with ijoma, and I want to remind you guys that the registration for our online courses is also ongoing. We have the corset, blazer, jumpsuit, trouser, and Igbo blouse class. So first of all, I will draft my pattern. This is the bra cup that I'll be using. I added a dart to the bra cup. The reason why I added a dart to this bra cup is to add depth to it. I want it to be deeper than normal. So first of all, I will draft my pattern. So from the midpoint of this pattern paper, from the center of this pattern paper, I will go in by 0.5 inch, and after that I'll go ahead and rule a straight line down. So the pattern that I'm drafting is the bra cup method. So after that I'll place my bra cup on that 0.5 inch line that I measured initially. Then I will place my underbust at the underbust of this bra cup. The underbust that I'm using is 13, so I place 13 at the underbust, and I'll mark my half length plus 2 inches for seam allowance. I'll also indicate my underbust. So right now I'll remove the bra cup. Right now I'll go ahead and trace out the shape of this bra cup. You can see I'm tracing out the shape of the bra cup. The person that making this corset for, her bust is size 34, but I am using size 36 for the bra cup. So I'll go ahead and rule the lines, that is for the half length, for the allowance, and for the under bust as well. So after doing that, I'll go ahead and label the lines so that we will not get confused. So I have my under bust, I have my half length, and I have my allowance as well. So if you want yours to have a basque waistline, you can go ahead and add your basque waistline. So after that, I'll cut off from the allowance, and after cutting off, I will go ahead and come in by 0.4 inch around the bra cup area. I will come in by 0.4 inch or 0.5 inch. The reason why I'm doing this is that if I cut on that bra cup area, if I cut directly on the bra cup area, when joining the bra cup, you will notice that the space you made for the bra cup will be bigger than the bra cup itself. So I'll come in by 0.5 or 0.4 from the initial bra cup line. So this is my new bra cup line, and this is the area where I will cut out from. So if I cut out from this area that I marked right now, when joining, you will realize that your bra cup and the space you made for the bra cup will be very equal. So after that, I'll go ahead and measure my dart. From the center line, I'll come in by 4 inches. 4 inches is my dart. My nipple to nipple is 8, so 8 divided by 2 is 4. So from that point, I will draw this 4 inches line to meet my underbust line. This dart to stop at the underbust. So I'll go ahead and subtract 0.5 on each side of this dart line. So after doing that, I am going to take my body measurement. I'll divide my bust by 4 plus 2 inches seam allowance. I'll also divide my waist by 4 plus 2 inches seam allowance. So after marking that, I will go ahead and cut out. So I am done cutting out the front. So right now I'll place the front pattern on the back pattern. I want to cut out the back, so the front and the back will be equal, the measurement to be equal, and they will be equal at the chest line as well. So if you want to add a dart to the back, fine. If you don't want, fine. So this corset will have a zipper, so I will add my zipper allowance. But if you don't want it to have a zipper allowance, you will go ahead and reduce the back measurements by 2 inches. So I'll also go ahead and add a dart if you want to add a dart. So if I'm sewing this corset, I will not really sew it with a dart. You will only add that if you want to, but for me there's no point adding a dart. So this is the fabric that we use to cover my bra cup. I will fold and I will fold again. Then from the center of this fold, I will go ahead and measure 6 inches round. You can make it 4 inches or 5 inches, but I like marking 6 inches so that it will cover very well, so that I'll have excess fabric to work with. So I'll mark 6 inches round, and after marking that, I'll go ahead and cut out. So after cutting this out, you will also go ahead and cut out another one for the second bra cup. So this one is for the second bra cup. So after cutting this out, I'll go ahead and open it this way. I'll open them up this way. So from the midline, I will come down by 1.5 inch. From the midpoint, you come down by 1.5 on this side and 1.5 on the other side. Then from there, you connect to the midpoint and then down to the other 1.5. So this is the fabric that we use to cover my bra cup, and after cutting it out, I'll also cut it out on my lining because I want the bra cup to have a lining. Even though I will pleat on it, I want it to have a lining. So I'll go ahead and repeat the same thing on my second bra cup piece. So this is what I have now. So I'll go ahead and cut out the lining. I am done cutting out the lining, so I have about 8 pieces right here. So I'll go ahead and join them. I'll go ahead and close those openings that I made. So I am done cutting out my front and my back, and I also cut out their lining. So if you are cutting out their lining, you should add a it depends on the type of fabric you are using. You should add a cloth gum or interface to the lining. If you want, you can add to the fabric. So I am done covering the bra cup with this bra cup piece. So right now I will go ahead and make my pleats on my bra cup. So you can see how I am making these pleats. So when I was making this, I realized that this particular this particular fabric that I cut out for the piece will not be enough. So I went ahead to join it so that I can have enough pleats on the bra cup. So if you are pleating, you go ahead and secure your pleats with your pin. So if you pleat, you will pin, and that is how I'm going to pleat on the whole of the bra cup. So after pleating on this bra cup, I'll go ahead and pleat on the other bra cup. So I am done pleating on this bra cup, and I'll go ahead and trim off the excess. I'll also repeat the same thing on the other bra cup. So right now I ran a stitch to secure the pleats, and I'll go ahead and trim down the excess I have on the bra cup. So when trimming, you should leave at least 1/2 inch seam allowance around the bra cup. So this is what I have now. I am done trimming that one. I'll also go ahead and trim the second one. So after trimming the second one, I will turn this bra cup with my lining. I said that I want to add a lining to this bra cup, so I'll go ahead and remove my pins. So this is what I have at the end of the day. I'll go ahead and cover each of these bra cup with their lining. So this is the lining. I'll go ahead and place them this way. Then I'll go ahead and turn only the upper part of the bra cup. So after turning, I'll trim off the excess allowance, and I'll also top stitch on the lining of the bra cup. Then after that, I'll cover. So this is the fabric that I will use for the upper part. That is the detail at the upper part. So the length of this fabric, I want it to be 11 inches. That is 10 inches plus 1 inch for seam allowance, and the wideness will be 10 inches plus seam allowance, that is 11. Then the length will be 25 for now. I just want to make it 25, and you go ahead and cut out. So the wideness is 10 inches, the length of the fabric is 25 inches. So this is the lining. I'm cutting out the lining first, so I'll add a very hard interface on this lining, and later I will have to pleat on this fabric. This is the lining. I'll have to pleat on my lining, so I'll make my pleats on each of them. So this is the skirt part. You know, the skirt has pleats on it or drapes on it. So this is the fabric that I'll be using for the drapes. So I'll go ahead and pleat this fabric. So it will be slanted. I'll start somewhere around the knee area. I'll place it this way. Then I'll go ahead and make my pleats on the skirt. So after pleating on the skirt, I will secure them with my pin, and then I'll iron them very well. So after ironing, you will trim off, and you also secure the sides with a stitch. So I am done with the skirt. Right now you can go ahead and shape the skirt. You can place the back on the front and then shape the skirt. So that is it for the skirt area. Notice that one side folded, so I went ahead to arrange that part. So that is it for the skirt. So I have added a hard interface on a very hard interface on the detail that I have around the shoulder. Then I'll go ahead and make my pleats on this lining. I told you guys that lining is where I will add my hard interface. Then I'll pleat on my lining because the lining will serve as a guide. Then I'll go ahead and pleat. After making these pleats, I will iron them down. I will iron them down very well. You sprinkle water on it and then iron it down very well. So I'll go ahead and repeat the same thing on the second part. And after doing that, you can now go ahead and secure these pleats with your stitch, and then you will turn it with your lining. This one will be around the shoulder area. Like I told you guys, it will be around the shoulder area. So you will take your time and iron it very well. After ironing, you will secure each side with a stitch. So I am done ironing. This is what I have. I'll go ahead and run a stitch on it. So here is the front. I have the lining and the main fabric, so I will go ahead and turn the upper part of the front and the sides. Then I will iron. So this is the back part. I'll also go ahead and turn the back part. I will turn the upper part and the sides of the back part. So after doing that, I will iron. So I am done turning and I've ironed properly. This is what I have, and this is my bra cup. I have ironed my bra cup too. So I'll go ahead and place the bra cups on their spaces. Then I'll go ahead and join. So this is the back part. First of all, I'll go ahead and close the zipper allowance of the back part. I'll use like 1 inch and close the zipper allowance. So here is the front. I am done joining my bra cup. So I'll go ahead and take my body measurement. I'll measure my bust and my waist. So after doing that, I will go ahead and join the front and the back together. So I'll go ahead and place the back on the front, and I'll go to my sewing machine and join them together. So I am done joining and I've ironed. So I'll trim down my half length. I'll trim it down. So after doing that, it is time to join the detail for the upper part. So I'll go ahead and run a stitch on the sides. So first of all, I'll open my zipper allowance, and this is how I'm going to place it. So you place the back parts of the detail, you place it back to back, like the back part of the corset should be facing the back part of the detail. You can see how I placed it. Then I'll go ahead and run a stitch, and after running a stitch, this is what you will have. Then you go ahead and fold it towards the back. So if you want, this detail can enter the zipper allowance. That is if you want. But if you don't want it to enter the zipper allowance, you can as well fold it in this way. You can see the way I'm folding it in now. You can as well fold it in and then hold them down with your pins. Then after doing that, you can go ahead and run a stitch on them. That is if you want. It depends on what you want. You can also make it to enter the zipper allowance. So I am done with the left side. I'll go ahead and join the right side. So this is the detail for the right side. They will face each other like back to back. The back one will be facing the back side of the main fabric, should be facing the back side of the detail. Then you go ahead and run a stitch on top, and then after doing that, you will fold it to the back exactly the way I did to the left side. Then you will secure it with your pin. But I think I prefer this one. And before you run a stitch on this, please make sure you overlock everything, all the rough edges. Please overlock them. And if you're making it for someone, your client should fit it before you secure it with your stitch. Before you sew on it, please make sure that your client fits it before you add your zipper allowance, please make sure that your client fits it, so that you be very sure that the size and the length of everything is okay on her body before you do this. So after doing that, I'll go ahead and join the upper part and the lower part together, and at the end of the day, this is what I have. Please guys, subscribe to my channel and please follow me on Instagram as So with Ijoma. Please, our registration for our online courses is ongoing. So guys, I will see you in my next video. Bye for now. Bye.